how to make your team cohesive. Or I wrote a book called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And let's talk about how to overcome those dysfunctions. Now, I called it the 5 dysfunctions for a reason. First of all, because I think there's lots of ways to go out building a team, but there's 5 things that destroy them. Secondly, I thought it was a good marketing thing to call it dysfunctions. If somebody wrote a book and said 4 ways to have a perfect marriage, I mean, I'm probably not even going to pick up that book for 2 reasons. 1, nobody has a perfect marriage. 2, I'm just going to feel crappy about myself. But if you wrote a book like 4 ways to destroy your marriage forever, I'm going to at least pick that up and look at the table of contents and see which ones of those I'm doing. Right? Like, oh, hey, I'm not doing that. Okay, I might buy this book. So the 5 dysfunctions of a team. What destroys teams and how do we overcome it? The first thing that destroys teams is the absence of trust. So what we have to do is we have to build trust on our teams. The lack of trust destroys teams. Now, people will think, well, no, duh, Pat. I mean, I can't believe they flew you here from the United States and they're paying you money to tell us that if you want to have a team, you should trust each other. I mean, how freaking obvious is that? But here's the thing. Oftentimes when we think about trust, we define it improperly. We think like you and I have known each other for years. What's your name? Stephanie. Stephanie and I have known each other for years. So I can trust that when Stephanie says something, this is probably what she's going to do. We trust each other. We can predict one another's behavior. That's not what makes it. Predictive trust does not make a team great. When I talk about trust on a team, I'm talking about what we call vulnerability-based trust. Vulnerability-based trust comes about when human beings on a team can and will regularly and honestly say things to each other like, I don't know the answer, I need help, I think I screwed that up, you're better than I am at this, teach me how to be like you, or I'm sorry, I was a total jerk yesterday and I apologize. When people can be that emotionally buck naked with each other, totally real, when you can get any group of people that are leading any kind of organization to be that way, it changes the dynamics completely of the organization. And if there's one thing you take away from today, it's this: get your leadership team to be vulnerable with each other. Okay? It's not touchy-feely. It's just, can they admit they're wrong? Can they acknowledge when somebody else has a better idea? Can they apologize? Can they ask for help? Can they honor somebody else's superiority to them in a certain area? When you have a team of people that can do that, you can do anything. And it's rare because we're fallible human beings who don't come out of the womb ready to do that. Remember the first, if you're married, you remember the first fight you had? And you thought, oh, okay, this is going to be the shortest marriage ever. And now, if you're like me, you can cycle through that same fight in like 5 minutes. Right? You're like, good fight, honey. That was awesome. We do it in front of our kids, and we're like, kids, you know we love each other, right? Your mom's just wrong all the time, but we still love each other, you know? And they're like, you're fine, mom and dad, because we make up. And as a result, the relationship gets stronger. If you never risk that, you don't get stronger, and you end up living over here. And that results in poorer decisions. And then people are really frustrated with each other. Okay, conflict is so important. Now, I'm Italian and Irish, so I came out of the womb like this. My wife is neither Italian nor Irish, but she's a convert. You know what that means? She's learned to argue better than me because she chose it for herself. Converts are better than people that are born into things. So my wife and I, from the very beginning, we've always argued well. Tough sometimes, but we learned to do it well. Well, my wife's little sister, my sister-in-law, married my old roommate right after we did. God bless you. And so my roommate became my brother-in-law, which was going to be awesome because I was going to have a golf buddy for life. And we would go out with them, and Laura and I'd argue, and they got along so well, it seemed. And a year and a half later, he left her, and they got divorced. And he came to me later and said, you know, Pat, I always thought you and Laura had a bad marriage because you argued. And he said, now I realize we had a bad marriage because we couldn't argue. Which is not to say that the quality of your marriage is directly proportionate to the number of fights you have, but you have to be able to go there. And why don't we apply that at work? We need to apply that at work, but we have to trust each other. See, when you develop that trust, and there's things you can do to develop trust. You know what we do to help teams develop trust? I'm going to go back so you don't think this is just esoteric. We have teams start by telling us where you grew up, So really quick, tell me where you grew up and how many kids were in your family and where'd you fall in the order, and what was the hardest thing about your childhood? Not your inner childhood, just being a kid. And so everybody shares it with everybody on the team, and people are like, 10 minutes later, they're like, hey, this is good. We know each other. And then we do their Myers-Briggs, and we find out you're an ENTJ, so you can steamroll people sometimes. You're an ENFP, so you can, oh, look, a bird, be flaky. And everybody goes, yeah, that's true. And they go, okay, wow, we can actually have honest conversations about our strengths and weaknesses. And then later we teach them, hey, tell them what you think they're great at. What's their number one strength that makes the team better? Now tell us what the one thing they do that kind of frustrates the team. And they do that, and they go, oh my gosh, this is great. You can actually teach people this in 2 days. And the team changes completely. And then you have to just keep doing it, and one day you realize you come to work, and you're just totally real. And then you can engage in conflict, because when you have that level of trust, conflict becomes nothing negative. It becomes the pursuit of truth. Conflict is the pursuit of the best possible answer. So now when you argue with me, Stephanie, like you always do, I'm like, thank you. If you're arguing with me, there must be something real here. I'm not threatened by it. I love the fact that you feel passionately. There must be something here I need to understand. That's a fabulous way to work. So, Sandy, so you're the head of marketing. If I were to pump you full of truth serum or bourbon, and this is your team, and I'm not Sandy, but go to many executives and say, Sandy, tell me your number one team. Is it this team here, or is it that marketing team back there? Many, many leaders would say, hey, Pat, don't get me wrong. I care about the executive team, I do. But see those marketing people? I hired all them. I sit near them. I spend a lot of time with them. They're marketing people, and I'm a marketing person. And I really like being with them, and I like being their leader. I would probably say that's my number one team. This is a really close second, but I really like that team. I feel really connected to them. That's very common, very natural, very normal, and very dangerous. Because when that happens, this team becomes like Congress, where Sandy is just representing her constituents, not really trying to solve the problems of the greater good. You see, everybody on this team needs to know that everybody else, this is their number one team. And Sandy will do something that's not in the best interest of the marketing department, but is in the best interest of the company. She will sacrifice resources or priorities or whatever else it has to be. But when you know that everybody else is really taking care of their department or their pet projects, it's no longer a team. Okay? Now, here's the problem. Sandy will come to me, no doubt, in her leather. And she'll say, sorry. Hey, Pat, because that's my name. She'll say, hey, Pat, here's the thing, though. What am I supposed to tell my marketing people, that I no longer care about them and that they're on their own? And it's like, no, here's the thing, Sandy. Do you know who wants you to make that team, this team, more important than that one? They do. Because when that team is your number one priority, and you're in charge of sales, and that's your number one priority, and you're in charge of engineering, and that's your number one priority, they are left to fight bloody, unwinnable battles with one another because you guys aren't doing it at the top. That will frustrate a good employee like nothing else. When they have to fight battles that haven't been resolved at the top because these people aren't working together. You know, here's a good way to look at this. When your kids get older, my youngest is 12 now, and I have a 12, 16, and two 20-year-olds. And it's kind of hard, you know, because they don't need me like they used to. And if you were to go to a psychologist or a counselor or a priest or minister or something and say, what can I do for my kids? You know what a lot of them will tell you? Work on your marriage. They want to know that there's cohesiveness up there. That gives them peace and clarity down here. Because for years, you know, it was like, marriage, I got to drive these kids and counsel them and do this. And you're like, we haven't been on a date in years. You remember that? That's not good. But it's especially as they get older, what they want more than anything is to know that their parents are actually on the same page. Your employees in your organization really want to know that the executives work together, that you hammer things out, that you're honest with each other.